Welcome to the Connecting Greeks podcast. We're connecting the Greek community all over the world through media, technology, and love for our culture.
Hello everyone and welcome to the show. On today's episode, we have Johnny Livanos and Ted Diamantis. These guys are great guys, huge in their fields, and you're going to find out why. Sit back, grab a glass, and join us.
Welcome, Ted. Welcome, Johnny. Thank you for coming on to the show. Thank you for taking the time during your busy schedules to be with us. And tell us, how are you doing?
Hey, Forty. Hey, how you guys doing? Thanks for having us. Hey, Johnny, how you doing?
What's up, Ted?
Hi, what's going on?
What's up, everybody?
How are we doing? Well,
Yeah.
We're doing.
Everyone okay? You guys healthy and safe?
We're all good. At least on my side, we're good. Just coping with this new reality that we're all in. Johnny.
Yeah, I've been. I'm based here in the suburbs of New York in Westchester. It's been good this week. Actually, we've had some really nice weather, so I've been enjoying the sun. But trying to stay busy and doing whatever we can to stay productive during the time where we're all locked at home. And I I have a Greek family, and I'm quarantining with my big fat Greek family right now. So it's always a lot of action, always a lot of food. Actually, right now my mom's she's making spanakopita, so my room smells really good too. So what, I'm doing okay.
That sounds awesome, man. Wait a minute, can I come to Westchester?
Yeah, this is a quarantine paradise.
Wow.
Yeah, because I'm here in Chicago in Lincoln Park, and actually we've had the most rain ever in 4-day period. I think we had 9 inches in 4 days. So yeah, we're getting soaked here. So it sounds like a lot better in Westchester. No one's cooking here. We're all trying to deal with this new reality, and Johnny and the rest of the team, we're just trying to knuckle down and see, how to keep generating business, how to keeping people interested in Greek wines and Greek wines and spirits, and also try to attract new people, trying to find new opportunities as well. Because as we were speaking earlier, this new medium that we're all using, and we're leading into social media even more. I think this, for Greek wines, it might be a good opportunity, strangely enough to say, because we have new content being created, we have new engagement, and hopefully also, even though our presence as a category, Greek wines as a category, we're pretty weak in the retail space. Nationally, I think there's by more and more people going into the retail world to shop, they might discover Greek wines now, even though we have a smaller presence, or like a lot of people being curious about Greek wines, maybe asking their retailers more and more about it. So
definitely.
Sorry.
So I said definitely. You hit really good points as far as how things are changing for us as consumers, and for of us that are in the industry as well, is just seeing this unknown of what's happening and what might happen moving forward. But it's pushing us, all of us together collectively, to kind of think outside the box and how to really connect and send our message out. Because I'm sure doing business prior to whatever it was, March 15th or prior, depending on what state you were in, we never ever thought that we'd come across a situation where our world just stopped right in front of us.
Yeah. And listen, Johnny can speak to this because his family is a 3-generation restaurant family in New York. With the restaurants closing, and I'd love to hear Johnny's take on this from the restaurant viewpoint, from his family's viewpoint. Greek wines relied on restaurant sales, and it affected us maybe more than any other European wine country, in terms of our distribution and our access to the consumer. Thinking outside the box, thinking and looking at new opportunities, is something that I've been I've been trying to stress for a long time that we need to be paying attention to retail more and more and more, because statistically, 75% of all wines sold are in retail in terms of cases, and about 67% of all dollars spent on wine are in retail.
Oh, that's amazing.
So yeah, but yeah, the restaurants. I'd love. Yeah, Johnny, why don't you talk to us a little bit about what goes on in your family world of restaurants? How?
So my growing up, especially as Greek Americans, a lot of Greek people are in the food space, right? It's like the classic American dream, fresh off the boat story of your grandfather starting a diner, and then that's how my grandfather started. And I remember being really young. He's like, the restaurant business is going to be there forever because people always need to eat.
We hear that
lo and
over and
behold,
over.
here we are.
Right.
We're here now, and everything's closed. So that's definitely a scary thing. People always talk about how the restaurants are almost recession-proof, or food is like recession-proof, right? Because people always need to eat something. But now this is a situation that no one would ever have predicted, where restaurants are forced to close, and in one end, it's really kind of scary, and because there's an uncertainty out there, we don't know what's going to happen. There's a lot of conversations that need to be had for the future of the restaurant business in New York. Is that what is people know what's going to happen, but at the same time, we're taking this. My family never really took a time to take a break, so we're all decompressing a little bit together.
So it's a well-deserved break.
Yeah, it is. We're taking a break. We're relaxing a little bit here together as a family, cooking food together. So that's been cool. We always eat together as a family, but we never cooked this much since since we all left the houses and went to college and things like that. But there's a lot of uncertainty out there. But we're trying to be optimistic and count the blessings that we have, and luckily we're all healthy and we're able to spend this time together. And we'll see how everything unfolds in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And as Greek Americans, Johnny hit on an important point. We are very vested in the food industry, whether in distribution, importation, restaurants. I bet you there's a lot of Greeks in our community, Greek Americans, that are more affected than disproportionately than maybe some other groups because of our engagement in the food world,
most likely,
or the food and wine world.
And in Greece too, right? It's agricultural based country where it's all about food and exporting to other countries. I wonder how that's been happening.
Well, that's been devastating, and that started even prior to the corona because of the EU tariffs that occurred on certain food products.
That's right. We forgot about those.
Yeah, we forgot all about that. I mean, we escaped it in the wine space, but there's a story, a true story of a whole warehouse of peaches that were canned and prepared to be purchased by Diamantis, which is one of the largest purchaser of Greek peaches. And because they had the tariff increase of close to 18 or 19%, they became unsellable in the United States, and they've been frozen in a warehouse.
Oh wow!
Not being able to ship anywhere else. It's a damage of close to 30 million, from what I understand, and because they've been canned specifically with American labels and can't be sold anywhere else. So. I mean, and not on top of this, what has happened? Greece has been. Has been gotten some right hooks lately.
As if they haven't had enough.
Right, exactly, and especially in the agricultural space, and now tourism. 30% of our GDP in Greece is directly and indirectly derived from tourism, and our wineries in Greece are some rely even a greater percentage, especially the Santorini producers. And the producers in Crete and these island destinations that they relied on tourism for even a bigger percentage of their business model. So this is going to be
it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, and we'll be feeling these effects for years to come. I'm
afraid you're right.
In the agricultural space, for sure, in the production space, in the wine industry, and this is not a myopic Greek issue. It's a world wine production issue. It's, like California. My God, I mean, they've had bumper crops 3 years in a row. They have so much wine in their tanks already, and then they have harvest coming up in 6 months. The same thing we have in Greece in 4 months. Where do you put all this new fresh wine if you haven't bottled it and sold it? Because people keep it in tank. Yeah, people keep it in tank. The producers keep it in tank. Remember, especially the smaller producers, they don't have space to store bottles, a lot of them. And also you have to make an investment in the glass to buy the bottles, which is an investment. If you can't turn that investment into cash, you have a problem. So you can't just keep on storing wine. It's
So
a major issue. So eventually, like in Greece right now, they have a program. I don't know if it passed yet or not. I think the EU just did pass it because, remember, all the rules are not, when it comes to wine, at least in agriculture, a specific country can make a decision, but it has to be okayed by Brussels, by Belgium. And I think they just recently okayed that wineries can sell their wine in tank to be converted into alcohol.
Oh,
and yeah, but here's an anecdotal story about why that's not a cure-all, because a smaller producer that his cost, is maybe $1.40. His cost to get that juice in the tank, cost of production, cost of grapes, he's going to be able to sell that. I'm talking about a liter. He's only going to sell that liter for 30 to 40 cents to make it into alcohol. So he's going to lose 75% on his cost. So it's catastrophic. It'll be catastrophic for a lot of people.
So, in other sense, that is basically that this over abundance of wine is basically because there's just not enough movement.
There's nowhere to sell it.
Yeah.
There's nowhere to sell it. I mean,
think about like the hotels and the restaurants in Greece during the tourism. That's where they sell a good amount of their wines,
right?
In terms of like the whole year. So if they're not gonna have a full tourism booming summer, Mykonos beach parties, those are all going to be shut down. I feel like that's where you're going to see a lot of the effect trickle down.
Yeah, and also the restaurants. Greeks consume. Remember, we consume 80% of our own wine. So. The restaurants being closed, it affects a lot of wineries that weren't supermarket wines or didn't have a place in some of the bigger grocery stores chains in Greece that dealt with these small wine shops or restaurants. A lot of my producers are restaurant oriented in Greece as well. Not all of them, and a couple of them have a couple SKUs, a couple labels in some of the Vasilopoulos, some of the larger, grocery store chains of Greece, mainly Athens and Thessaloniki, of course. But most of them are restaurant reliant, so that's gone as well, and export reliant. Our producers export all over the world. That's dried up completely. I was talking to one of my more important producers, I would say, just because of size. He hasn't received an order for one of his export markets until received one from us this week, and that's been for the last 3 months.
It's definitely taken a toll on everybody. That trickle down effect, and unfortunately, there's not much we can all do, right? I mean, now we just kind of have to be a little more patient and creative on what are the next steps moving forward, because now that our economies are slowly starting to open up again, based on the restrictions that every state is putting into place. I know the process will be kind of slow. The recovery seems it's going to be kind of slow, but I guess in the meantime, it allows us to kind of get back to the drawing boards and, as we discussed before, thinking outside the box on where do we go from here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, listen, doing what you're doing right now. This is what we're doing today. Well, we, with Johnny and the rest of our team, we've engaged heavily with Zoom trainings for our distributors. We're trying to take advantage of this time. We're trying to get mind share. We're directly engaging with retailers. We're trying to do virtual wine dinners. We're trying to do virtual retail tastings. We've been, we're doing our own kind of educational stuff with our winemakers, either through Instagram or through Zoom meetings, where we're bringing our winemakers, and getting people to see them visually. which is connecting them with a lot more people. So,
Right.
there is this different strategies, and in Greece, because two of my guys, Stelios Voutaris and George Skouras. George is the president of the Greek Winemakers Federation, Stelios vice president, and Stelios specifically is in charge of promotions in his position. And we're right now talking about what do we, if we give access to some of the European funds that are getting freed up now, again, because everybody realizes that you need to do more marketing now than you ever have before, just to stay competitive and relative. That the programs that we want to design are going to be social media based, are going to be trying to get the consumer engaged, trying to get him to get into their wine shops, liquor stores, grocery stores, and going, hey, I've been hearing about Greek wine, or I've tasted, or my friend told me about it, or I heard a podcast, and I want to have Greek wine. And hopefully that will create the pull, because we've always needed pull. We've always had the push, but so I think right now, even the national campaigns that are going to be designed, hopefully engaged with and actually executed, that it'll be more about what we're doing today, about what you guys are doing, about outreach and social media. And I think this is going to be, again, how we started this whole conversation. I think in every crisis, politicians will tell you there's opportunity. Even Aristotle said that, and so, we need to kind of test the waters and check out other ways of communicating with people and getting our message out there. So yeah.
So Ted, tell us a little bit about Ted Diamantis and how Diamond Importers came about, and a little more about your portfolio. I mean, I think it's very interesting to me, being in the industry for so long. I think, and I feel confident in saying so, that you have one of the best portfolios that I've ever come across, work with. We've worked directly and indirectly in different facets of the industry. But I'd love for our listening audience to know a little bit more about yourself and Diamond Imports.
Holy shit, you got a couple hours? No.
Yeah, I was going to say, let's get the abridged version, Ted.
Yes, definitely. I mean, we want them to get to know you.
I'll say every fifth word. No. So, listen, I was just... this company I started was back in 1991, 92. And how did it come about? It came about simply because after college, and I went, graduated in economics and poli-sci, and thought I was going to do other things in my life. And after 2 years of a stint in corporate America, I was kind of like, God, that entrepreneurial Greek thing took over on me. And I was like, I got to figure something else out here. Being first generation Greek, of course, and my family being very, very engaged in the Greek community here in Chicago, and also very strongly in Greece, because literally my family was, we're one of the rare occasions that we didn't bring the whole village with us when we came here. I mean, most of my relatives, every one of them basically stayed in Greece and Athens. And so we had a lot of strong connections in Greece still. So I went out there, and what happened, I simply, out of pure fate, I met a young winemaker making wine in his father's garage, who had these aspirations and these dreams, and he was a magnetic figure, and he was just slightly older than me, a few years, not much older, but much, much wiser. And he had a vision, and he captured my imagination. That was George Skouras, who at that time was one of the pioneering, groundbreaking young winemakers that wanted to work with the indigenous varieties, bring back the glories of Greece, and he did it without a roadmap and without being in the wine industry. He just started. He started from zero as well, and that guy just kind of became my mentor in the wine world. And I was just like, oh my God, this is kind of a cool kind of space to be in, And at that time, I think it was the late 50s. Greek? No, I'm just kidding. It was in the early 90s. I mean, the Greek wines were myopically only in Greek restaurants. That was it. Throughout the United States, and they were in Greek towns. And there was only, there was only the big negociant producers that you could find in the United States, because basically that's all that was available in Greece. To tell you the truth, there was no boutique artisanal wine scene going on. Right. And I was like, oh my God, so many plethora of Greek restaurants, and typically from when I knew at the time, because during college, of course, I was in hospitality. I bartended, worked at bars, I worked at restaurants, did all that world. So I saw that there wasn't like a lot. The Greek wines that were available were kind of like people would only drink them when they went to a Greek restaurant just to have an ethnic experience, but they weren't very good. So I was like, wow, this guy Skouras, he's making these killer wines, and he's got this vision. And from what I've tasted, I didn't know crap. I had to teach myself anything. After I got into it, of course, I went to wine school. I worked harvest for 4 years. I did other things, which later in life as well around wine, so I can learn more and more about the production and how it's actually made. I was like, wow, this will be an opportunity. All these Greek restaurants. Well, little did I know that the Greek restaurateur of that time didn't give a shit about how good a wine was, only gave a shit about how much it cost. And, and it was a secondary product to them. They were like, people are here to eat, and they just drink by chance. They drink. Right. It's not, it's just a beverage to wash down our food. And it was a commodity to them, and that was it. So I automatically recognized in my customer for fine Greek wine or a different expression, a new expression of Greece. And again, I was only working with one producer who had, at the time when I started in 92, which was a container of wine that I ordered. And George Skouras, realizing he was a young entrepreneurial guy and he knew that I was kind of undertake a big task, he fronted me a container. He goes, If you sell it, you pay me. If you don't, we've both taken a risk and we both lose. And that's how it started. That's amazing. And that's how it started.
So from one vision, two visions with the fact that he believed in you, vice versa, and that's how it all began.
That's how it all began. Yep. And we worked with George, and I realized selling to Greeks was going to be the hardest thing. So I tried to listen, the main wine market where all wine is sold is this broad market that no one's talking to. So I'm going to dare go where no one else has gone, because going into a Greek restaurant and competing with every little Greek importer or Butari or Tsandali at the time.
Of that time, yeah.
They didn't care. If it wasn't priced cheaper, then they didn't give a shit. So, I try to elevate the conversation. I was like the only guy walking around the United States back in the early 90s talking about terroir, talking about varieties. Nobody knew it. You talk to anybody in the Greek wine world, they didn't even know it's red, white, rosé. These are the importers. They didn't even know what they were selling. They didn't even know the varieties in their wines. And they were selling illegal wines like Roditis, which was a simple rosé wine that didn't even have the variety of Roditis in it.
Right.
So this was the landscape, and we started with one producer. At that time, I also had Chateau Caras. I was an importer, Chateau Caras, when the family still owned it before it went into bankruptcy and got sold off.
Is that the same as Porto Caras?
Porto Caras. It used to be called Chateau Caras.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Yep. And I was, and the last Christos Caras, which was the son of Yannis Caras, who was the founder of the winery, he was still owned it and ran it. I imported the wines just for Chicago at that time. Then about a few years later, they went into bankruptcy and they got broken up, and then they produced wine there again for, I think, about 7, 8, maybe even a decade after that. So we started off as a very small company. And the one thing about George Skouras, he understood. He told me this a long time ago as we're battling it out and trying to establish Greek wine in the early 90s and mid 90s in the United States. He's like, Ted, Greece will never be important to anybody if there's only one producer, one great producer. And even if there's 5, it's not enough. We need to have 100, 200 great producers for anybody to pay attention to us. And that's why he became a mentor to a lot of other wineries. He became a model of what he was trying to do. He helped his contemporaries. He helped Sigalas. He helped other producers that were young producers at the time, because he was classically trained. George Skouras, one of the very rare winemakers in Greece. I think there's only 2 or 3, maybe 3 now, that went to Dijon, Burgundy, for the enology and viticulture.
Oh, that's fascinating.
So, and he had a world viewpoint because, he worked in Europe. He came back to Greece. So, he worked with Caligan and a couple other people. He created Gentilini with the family. He was the first winemaker in Gentilini. So he was trying to inspire because he knew that all the boats have to rise in this tide. There has to be a tide, and we have to have a critical mass. And so slowly, what that occurred for me is it would be like, go talk to that guy, go talk to that guy, go talk to that guy. And so he was pointing me in the right direction with the right producers. And in the meantime, what I did, because I couldn't make a freaking living selling Greek wine.
I can only imagine.
I was bartending at the same time and managing a restaurant in Greektown in Chicago, trying to make my dad was like, you went to school and got 2 degrees to do this? He goes, you're out of your freaking mind.
The Greek guilt.
Yeah, he's like, what are you doing? And you go to work with Greeks? He goes, you are out of your mind.
Oh, man.
And
I can relate to that. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, absolutely. So he was looking at me like I'm nuts. But I went to work for a distributor. There was at the time, there was a really boutique small distributor in Chicago called Heritage Wine Cellars that had Kisslers and Paulmeyers and all these were cutting edge wineries at the time, pioneering wineries of California, and Sonoma-Cutrer and Vineyard Brands imports and Burgundies and all these great little books at the time, which are now seminal, producers and historic producers, Stag's Leap Wine Cellars, shit like that. And they just kept on running into me at wine shows and talking about Greek wines and going in and seeing, fine dining establishments about Greek wine that never heard about Greek wines. And they're like constantly running into me, and they're like, and they had tasted the wines, Skouras' wines. And at the time, and they're like, and they approached me in 1995, and they're like, hey man, and the owner, which was a really historic figure in the wine world, not only in Chicago, but in the United States, Gerald Hirsch, who's since passed, his son is running the business now.
Okay.
He approached me and he's like, he goes, listen, man, I want to talk to you. He goes, we like to say that we have some of the best producers from all over the world. We don't have anything from Greece. He's like, we've tasted your wines. We think they're the best Greek wines that we've tasted that are available in the market. And we'd love to represent those wines. But more importantly, awesome. He goes, I know you're not making a living doing this. I'm like, yeah. He goes, why don't I give you a job and I teach you the business. And I'm like, wow. He goes, listen, it's obvious you have some ability selling because we see your stuff where nobody else had ever sold a Greek wine before. And there's a lot of Greek restaurateurs in the city. And I know you guys like doing business amongst yourselves. Little do you know how difficult it was. And so he goes, so he gave me a job, but I go to him, listen, my dream is to create a national import company and to spread the gospel of Greek wine. And I need to have time to travel and to develop distributors and to support my business and work harvest like I used to back then. Still, I'd like to. He goes, listen, I'll make you a deal. He goes, you work, you get paid. You work, you don't work, you don't get paid. Meaning straight commission. And if I left the market, my commission dollars, I don't get. And I was like, fair enough. And that's how I got into it. And that's how I learned the business, started working with other great importers from all over the world, started visiting other countries. 17 years I did this, and I was a key account on-premise manager at the end of my stint there. But I took all this knowledge that I was getting working with German, French importers, Italian importers, California producers regarding labeling, regarding distribution, and everybody in the industry, because they thought I was some crazy kid trying to sell Greek wines and they had never heard of it and they were fascinated by it. They all wanted to help me because they weren't threatened by it.
That's amazing.
So they would they would go, okay, if you want to be a distributor, they would call up and go, hey, Joe, in Massachusetts, whatever. I got a guy who has Greek wines. They're really killer. You should talk to him. You don't have any Greek wines. And that's how I started getting to understand, increasing the web and getting to know these distributors around the country. Because also I was one of their key salespeople in the Chicago market, which is the 4th largest market in the United States. So they relied on me too. They had a vested interest in helping me out too, a little bit. But it was mostly the kindness and them seeing me trying to do something that nobody else was doing at the time. And so I slowly built the book, and collected these young producers like Alpha State. I bought the first case out of that winery, even before he sold a case in Greece. I had poured him before when he was planting his vineyards, when he was making his wines at Kiriani. So I got him right because I saw his vision. I saw what he was trying to do in this appellation that was abandoned in a median in northern Greece. I saw that he was a visionary in his own right, and I was like, I got to work with this guy. The same thing with Sigalis. Santorini. Nobody knew about Santorini, let alone anywhere else in the world. Nobody knew about it in Greece. Nobody drank a Sertico in Greece until maybe a decade ago, if not even that. Okay, so I kept on recognizing what was going on in Santorini, learning about this unique place, and tasting the wines of Paris's, and Skouras going, you got to talk to this guy. You got to taste his wines and talk to him, and seeing his unique person. He was a pioneer on Santorini. So I'm like, started working with him, and that's how we built the portfolio. I was trying to find the most unique people in each appellation. Of course, I wasn't a greedy guy, and not greedy. I'd also realized that I could have had Vasiliou. I could have all these wineries at one time or another. We're all searching.
I'm sure.
For their wine. And the one thing I didn't want to do is fill my basket with all these producers to compete against each other, because I knew if I
That's a very good point.
job for one guy, if I had to sell 10 guys wine, I would have to sell one less case of somebody else's, because the pie wasn't growing. So I would be cannibalizing my own producers, and I would be cannibalizing the category. So I wanted to develop each producer slowly to get them their own legs underneath them before I brought something else on, and try to squeeze that pie larger and larger to expand the consumer group and the restaurants or wherever to sell them. So there's enough room. So that's why I didn't grab everything. Tselipos, Yanni's a friend. How many times he'd asked me to represent my wines over the years, all these other people. And they would always think, like, why don't you take my wine? Because I'm like, because I can't do the job that you're going to do.
And then you can't please everybody, right?
Right. I couldn't.
Well, the approach that you just mentioned, in my opinion, has definitely worked. The fact that you thought about the fact that, you don't want to be greedy and you don't want to basically do injustice to those that are on board with you. I think what you've done is tremendous. I see it for myself in the different markets that I've traveled to, the finer restaurants. It's always refreshing when I sit down at a restaurant, non-Greek restaurant, I should say, and open up the wine list, and I spot one of your wines on the list, and it goes to show me that your efforts that you've worked for so long have really made a difference.
Well, thank you for saying that. But it's been about people like you. It's been people like Johnny and his family. It's been about people that...
Is everybody there?
Yep.
Yeah, it's about all these people that have contributed to help lift me, our producers, and the category up. Because literally, I felt like for 15 years, from 1992 to mid-2000s, I was the only person out there. And there's so many times that it was almost like a breaking point for me. And I was going, what the hell am I doing with my life? If I had dedicated 15 years into any other profession, I'd be retired by now with the effort I was putting in, working 2 full-time jobs, selling wine for Heritage Wine Cellars, who eventually has now become the 3rd largest wine company in Illinois, and went from 7 salespeople where we started to, 80, whatever they are now. So it's been because I've met people through the journeys that have embraced what I was trying to do, and also saw the value of what Greece had to offer and these producers. Because we've talked about this many years ago. It's not about the wine; it's about the people. It's about the people behind the wine, and that's why I've tied my star to exceptional people. I've been lucky that they've allowed me to do what I've done. Now now we're in 44, 45 states. Johnny, I don't remember. We have Johnny on the East Coast working for us. We have another team member, Casey, and I use the word team because I believe in teams, because we all do this together. Our distributors I look at them as partners, even though they look at us as adversaries, because we're just constantly yelling at them to sell more wine.
Ted, you mentioned earlier, people like Johnny and his family. Johnny, can you kind of chime in and give us a little background of what is you and your family and how you got involved with Ted?
Yeah, so my family's been in the restaurant business for decades now, and starting with my grandfather. He classic American dream story where he came from Greece, worked as a dishwasher, working 80 hours a week, saved up enough money to eventually buy a small little cafe, and kind of grew from there. And then with my dad, my uncle, my aunt, they took the business to the next level. And they opened up. They've opened up a bunch of restaurants. We have 5 restaurants now, my family.
We need some plugs, Johnny. Give us some plugs here.
Yeah, so we have. Thank you. So my
Just being
family.
modest.
So they have Oceana Restaurant in Manhattan. So that's definitely the crown jewel of the family's restaurant. So that's right in near Times Square in the McGraw-Hill building by Rockefeller Center. It's across the street from Radio City, like Michelin starred seafood restaurant. And then we have for the Greek restaurants, we have Molivos, which is probably one of the.
Yeah. There you go. Say it. It was
one of my favorites.
Molivos, which is probably one of the first restaurants in the country to do all Greek wine list. Yep. And I think even today it has the largest all Greek wine list in the country, maybe even the world. So that's been around for like almost 25 years. And then I opened up Usia in 2017, which is again Greek focused, but a more like fresher, younger feel to it, taking more of like the flavors of Greece and making it flavors of Greece, but in a more modern presentation. And we have a young Greek chef, Vasiliki from Crete there. She's doing a fantastic job. And then I was in charge of the cocktail program, so really focusing on Greek spirits whenever possible, because that's what I love. I love Greek spirits. And you guys saw the BCB presentation I gave a couple weeks ago on Greek spirits, because that's something I'm really trying to just make my mission to share with the world.
Finish telling us about your restaurants, but then let's jump back to that Greek spirit. So let's put a pin in that.
Okay. So we have Usia Restaurant, which is on 57th Street in Manhattan. So Greek-focused Mediterranean food. Then in addition, so I said Molivos, Oceana, Usia, and then we have my family has 2 restaurants in Westchester County, so the Modern Barn, not Greek at all. It's more American cuisine.
Everything's Greek. Yeah, everything's Greek.
And then City Limits Diner in White Plains, which has been around for 25 years. That's a staple to the community.
Is it 24 hours?
No. My grandpa, he had the Arch Diner, which was in Bensonhurst, Brooklyn. He sold that. That was a 24-hour diner. He ran it for I don't even know how long, before I was born. And that's kind of how he got a lot of success, was from that diner. But he sold it because the 24-hour diner lifestyle was kind of grinding away. And
really?
I can only imagine.
Yeah. So when they opened up City Limits Diner, the idea was, okay, how do we take the diner cuisine but then bring it upscale a little bit? So they made everything in house. They have a bakery in house. They're baking their own bread. They're spinning their own ice cream. They're making pies, cakes. You can get your wedding cake there. And then they've become kind of a staple in the community. They're just the go-to place. And yeah, it's been around. It's been it's probably our most successful restaurant, and it's been there for we had our 25th anniversary last year.
So you guys are basically like beginners in the restaurant business. You don't really know yet what's going on, right? Is that what I'm understanding?
Basically, yeah. We're still figuring it out.
Yeah, they're still figuring it out.
That's amazing. That's great. So let's unpin. You spoke about Greek spirits. Can you tell us what's going on with you and the Greek spirits?
Yeah. So while I was at Usia, I opened up the restaurant there at my family, and that's actually when I met Ted. I knew Ted before, because before working with my family, I was actually the bar manager at Zeytinya, a Greek restaurant by Jose Andres in D.C. But I me and Ted crossed paths again, and he invited me to go to Greece with him on one of his famous Greek wine trips. And on that trip, I just had an unbelievable time, an amazing experience, and it was drinking tsikoudia, raki, and ouzo and tsiporo throughout the Greek mountainsides.
Johnny, can I just interject real quick? My mom's maiden name is Tsikoudakis, and she's from Chania, Crete.
Oh, wow.
So her family I'm just going to say that right now.
Oh, beautiful. It was near Chania in Crete where had this like epiphany moment where I was like, the spirits in Greece are bar none. They're some of the best in the world, and Greece has this untold story of traditional distilling and spirits that needs to be told. It's a story that not that many people know about. And I don't even think that many Greeks outside of Greece really know about it besides ouzo. And and for me, this was 3 years ago. Like I knew what tsipuro was, but I never really fully understood the tsipuro drinking culture and how it's like you go into someone's house, they're pouring you a tsikodia, especially in Crete, with a big meal, and it's kind of like a gesture of hospitality, and it's welcoming, and I fell in love with that, and when I was opening Lucia, I wanted to try to bring that element to the restaurant, but at the same time, I had this light bulb moment where I'm like, you know what, there's got to be a way to make spirits, at least make Greek spirits more accessible to idea of Stray Dog Gin came from. So while working at Lucia, I spent a couple of years trying to figure out if that's even possible. And then actually we just launched, together with Ted, we launched Stray Dog Wild Gin in the United States, which is one of the first Greek gins being produced and imported into the United States.
That's awesome.
Yep. And yeah, and I've always, when we were there on the trip, Johnny and I, because Johnny, I knew how Johnny's interest was in the spirits world, and I have a little bit of an background in the spirits world because about 15 years ago, I'm an old and very close friend of mine is Steve Olson, and Steve Olson is one of the great educators of wine and spirits, of course, and he's one of the founders of Del Maguey Mezcal. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that brand or not.
Yes.
So 15 or so years ago, it might be even longer now. God, I don't want to do the math. Working with Steve because I had brought him in. I brought him to Greece. I brought him to Greece for the first time and got him and took him to Inorama, which is the big Greek wine show and spirit show. And we were going around tasting spirits like crazy. So they did wine. Him and Tara Thomas tasted 300 wines in a day and a half, and then another half day. And Tara Thomas is the editor of Wine Spirits magazine, and we were all together on that trip, and that was years and years ago. And then we
challenge. Can we take that challenge of tasting 300 wines?
I don't tell anybody to do that because that was a crazy.
I accept the challenge.
And it was at a time where Greek wines weren't all that great, so and then we spent a half day doing spirits, and Steve Olson was blown away. And this was just when Del Maguey was just getting introduced, the first mezcal brand in the United States, elevated mezcal brand, from Mascaleros and real mezcal, not Jose Cusano Rojo with worm in it. So Ron Cooper, who is the founder, Steve Olson is one of the partners. I became friends with him years ago, and Ron Cooper was one of the most amazing human beings on the planet, a great artist in space and light movement, but really a unique and pioneering person. At the time, he was a starving artist still, still trying to build a brand. And 15 years ago, I invested a little bit of money in Del Maguey because they didn't have enough money to buy bottles.
Wow.
And so I got involved in the spirits world, in mezcal, from a very early stage. I was one of the early investors and friends of Ron Cooper's, and we went out and with our bags and had mezcal everywhere we went and turned people onto it, and people were like, what the fuck is this shit? And so I took that mentality and that knowledge and that experience that I had with Ron Cooper, and I could see that happening with Greek spirits, and Steve Olson could too. And when I met Johnny and I saw his lust for this and his desire and his vision for this, I was like, man, I needed somebody like that because I had been trying to do stuff with Greek spirits for years. And, it was kind of like hitting my head against the wall. And I'm like, wow, here's a young guy and he wants to do this gin, which I think is brilliant. And, and so I absolutely encouraged and wanted, and I'm super stoked that Johnny has undertaken this. He's got the guts and he had the chutzpah to fucking get to do this, dude. And I was like, wow, fucking awesome. So,
Thank you.
I think, so I've always thought that these Greek spirits were, and it's Stray Dog Gin and the Verino, this little micro distillery in Peloponnese that's doing these incredible things historically, but tiny production and even tiny distribution, even in Greece. I think it's a good space. It's a cool space. I think it adds to that tapestry of the Greek story,
Well, one thing to add to that, sorry to cut you off. It was one thing to add to that, Ted, is how the story, the comparison to Mezcal and Cipro, I think, is so strong because before Del Maguey came around, like Mezcal was kind of something that you just drank in the villages where you had small distillers that would kind of produce it and share it amongst small towns. It wasn't something that was being majorly distributed as it is today, where Mezcal there's like 1,000 Mezcal brands. And in Greece now, today, Cipro is still being produced in small batches throughout the villages, and it's being consumed hyper locally. And now you're starting to see in Greece there's a bigger appreciation towards Cipro, and they're starting to be creating new brands and putting more focus on the varieties. And I'm really curious to see how that evolves and maybe translates outside of Greece. If you're going to start seeing, people making a lot more cocktails with Cipro and mixing with it. And that's what I was trying to do at Usia, because I think it's such a cool spirit. It's so versatile. It's just to showcase the Greek dynamic flavor and culture in a new way. And it's going to take a new generation to kind of change a culture.
Well, you know what had to change more than anything, and this is what had to change in Oaxaca and in Mexico regarding mezcal, was the laws. The Norma, that's what they call the laws in Mexico, and Ron Cooper was a pioneer in trying to force these laws to change to be able to export it legally and actually call it mezcal and create a designation for it. So the same thing has to occur in Greece. Cipro right now is held back by poor laws, by bootleg Cipro, by the inability of clarity of the rules of how to produce Cipro and what it's supposed to be, and the bootleg Cipro is a big problem in Greece.
Yeah, I just read an article recently. There was people are, I forget the exact thing that was going on, but they're saying they're producing a small amount of Cipro, yet like bars and tavernas are serving it on tap or like on draft to get around to certain tax.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So once that changes in Greece, which is in the process because the market's going to force them to change, the distillers hopefully will force them to change, and that's the big part is getting the distillers all together to agree on certain things. We need to get that done in Greece first before we have this outward projection of the product, and that's what I was talking. There's one of the great young bartenders in Greece is Dimitris Lapopoulos, which was also one of the most pioneering guys. Him and his partner started 3 Cents Tonics and Sodas, which is one of the hottest tonics and soda brands in Europe, and we do import in the United States. But he was what he was going to do, what he was in the process of doing, and COVID has held him up. Is in London? He's going to open a a grape distillate spirits based bar only. So everything was going to be centered on spirits, which I think is the next big thing in the spirit space, is grape-based spirits. Pisco is grape-based, I think that there's going to be a moment, hopefully in the future, that grape-based spirits, and there's grape-based vodkas out there, and there's grape-based gins out there, and there's all kinds of grape-based spirits. I think Cipro, if Greece can get their act together, I think could be a big promotion. They've been playing with the idea of having a Cipro promotion campaign for the category. But again, the distillers can't all agree to get that done. I really believe in that spirit. And it's also I think it's just like France markets their cognacs and all their ODVs and all their grape-based distillates. It's part of the wine world. It supports the farming community. It supports the wineries. It supports the whole ecosystem. So I think it's not anathema or kind of a crazy thing that we go from being a wine-centric company to also doing these great spirits.
That's great. Gentlemen, I think we covered quite a bit. A lot of great and interesting things that are happening in the works. You definitely gave us a good education all around, despite the fact that we've been in the business. There's always something to learn. There's always something exciting going on, despite the fact that we're going through some hard times and some challenges. But we also want to let our listening audience know.
I think we have these guys, they have the personalities that we need to bring them back on the show, and we need to plan some webinars. We need to plan some tastings. Yeah. We need to do more stuff, because I think these guys really have their stuff together, and they really know what they're doing, and they could be, a very important piece of, spreading the word of Greek wines and Greek spirits, and hopefully when this is all over, now that Johnny's my good buddy, I'm going to come to New York. I want to
definitely.
These little rinky dink restaurants that you're part of that I've been hearing about. And Ted, I want one of these trips to Greece that I've been hearing about as well.
I'd love to have you guys.
We got to get on this.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And you guys got to come to Chicago too and hang out with us here at the global headquarters.
One of my favorite restaurant towns or cities.
I've been listening to TED Talk, and I love the Chicago accent. I love it.
Well, Ari,
I can't get away from my roots, can I?
No, don't do that. But Ari, to your point, for our listening audience, we do have a webinar in the works that we're going to just nail the date, which we'll let our listening audience know through our social media. But we are unfolding and launching our series called Vines Unknown, and our first webinar will be on the island of Santorini. So we're definitely going to have both Ted and Johnny back with us. But any information you want to let our audience know as far as to get more information, web addresses, social media? We're definitely adding our product, your portfolio, to our platforms on Urban Wine Club and also on the Greek Wine Club for our folks. If they're interested, they can purchase any of your wines right from our platform. But any information as far as letting us know?
Sure. Listen, we have a really informational website with a lot of great. We have great recorded seminars with all our winemakers and conversations, and we have some good little clips on there. We have some great information about each individual producer and the wine. So diamondwineimporters.com. Our Instagram, it's you'll find it under my name, Ted_Diamantis, DIAMANTIS. So follow us, join us, check us out.
And then we just launched the Stray Dog Gin website. So that's www.straydoggin.com. We're also on Instagram at Stray Dog Gin as well. And then there's me. If you want to follow me, Johnny Livanos, just my name.
Definitely.
He has an exciting life. Everybody follow Johnny, please.
Could I suggest, Johnny, that you also get the Greek Ryan Reynolds, please?
Okay.
Whoa, hey.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I like Ryan Reynolds.
Gentlemen, it's been an honor and a pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us on our show.
You guys are doing what you're doing.
Be safe, healthy to you and your families, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. We'll talk soon. Bye-bye.